Publishing is the funnest job in the world. A manifesto. Fourth wall breakage, which is what the YouTube platform has been built on, and a very Brechtian way that you just saw me do with setting up this scene is going to be continued with the fact that I'm going to eat a wagon wheel during this video and drink some tea from a Charles Darwin mug. Is how I do my videos on this website anyway, but it's particularly poignant because today I'm going to be talking about my career. Now, I haven't made this video, even though I've been on YouTube about 9 years. Because I've been in publishing a long time and I love it, and but it is my career. It's the bread. It's how I pay for these flashy curtains. I got these from a charity shop. When you are a kind of medium creator like me, this isn't my full-time job, and I still need my full-time job to eat the food. When I thought about making videos about publishing, but particularly this one, I always felt like I needed to be super prepared for it. It needed to be like the most eloquent, to the point, professional presentation, which are things that I have given and things that I can do. I've gone to universities and given big, long lectures on publishing, and I feel like I can academically and in a professional business setting talk about publishing, but that's not what this platform is, and that's not what you guys have been asking me for. And to be honest, I feel like I have a duty to pass this information on that I've got to you guys about the publishing world, because it can feel inaccessible for a lot of people, and I'm also so passionate about it that I want lots of people to join it and make it bigger and grow it. The procrastination and the pressure of trying to make it almost job interview-like has stopped me from making it, and I don't think that's not what we're about here. So I'm making this in a big Blink-182 hoodie with my hair in a bun, eating wagon wheels, and setting this up as not a professional, or maybe an ASMR lesson. Any ASMR fans out there? Do you like that? Setting this up not as a professional presentation of everything I know about publishing, but hopefully a spontaneous, unplanned way that young people who know nothing about publishing and don't have any access to people who can tell them about it, I hope it'll be a little conversation starter and thought process for you guys to start thinking about and trying to understand what you would do in publishing were you to want to join. No notes. This is just what I'd say to you if you came up to me in a pub and you were like, hey, I watch you on YouTube. I wanted to get into publishing, but I don't really understand what you do in publishing. I would ask for a pint of cider from you for my time, and I would tell you this. So I've got some videos on publishing already that you can watch here. There should be a whole playlist by now. One's about ways you can tell that you might be a good person to work in publishing, whether it's a hard industry to get into, how to get an internship. Hopefully all that will be up there, or it will be by the, hopefully soon. But once you're in publishing, there's so many different skills you could use, degrees you could utilize or not utilize, and so much to do, so much that still needs inventing that I can't really think of a skill that wouldn't be useful in publishing. There are so many departments and there's so much to do. I hope I can give you a little rundown of the general gist of the roles that exist, and I'm going to note just very quickly whether I've worked in them. Let's do books conception to it getting into readers' hands very quickly and very briefly. Writer's pen to bookshop. Writer writes the book. Well done. It's hard. Writer finds an agent. Agencies are there to find authors publishing deals. They're there to spot new talent. They're there to put all the time into reading the slush pile, reading things that are very unprepared, kind of new, freshly finished book level, and kind of almost matchmaking a publishing house with an author and saying, hey, this editor is really talented at this publishing house is really good at selling this kind of book. I think they'd love your book. I'm going to tell them about it and I'm going to sell it to them. The best agents are really good at spotting trends in publishing. They're good at understanding what a good manuscript is before it is edited properly. They're really good at business deals and money in a more bargaining sense of it. They don't necessarily have business degrees or anything, but they're good at doing a deal. But they're also highly emotionally intelligent, and they can work with authors, because as you can imagine, there's authors with all sorts of different personality types. Being emotionally astute enough to make friends with an author, understand where they're coming from, and really get them to the next level, get them to the next place they need to be at, without losing momentum or getting frustrated. They're saints, basically, is what I'm saying. Agents are crafty saints. Wagon Wheel break. This is a job I've never done, although in other roles I've worked closely with agents. I go for coffee with them and learn about their jobs, and once a book is signed with a publisher, the agents can be quite a big part of that relationship between you and the author. So yeah, they've been around in my professional life. After the agent, hopefully an editor buys the book. The editors, again, saints incarnate. You can get anything from a really commercial agent who specialises in cookbooks and self-help, or you get ones that are really into sci-fi and like know the whole of the sci-fi canon. You get ones that are really literary, which I think is the stereotype that lots of people think when they think of editor, is somebody who went to Oxford and has read all the classics and knows how this new book fits into that classic thing, and gets people to a level where they can win the Man Booker Prize, which is a thing, but it's only one type of editor. And their role is to not just edit the books, because I think, again, people think that editors are just there to like move commas about, but actually that's a copywriter. Editors do that too, but they also do so much more. They commission books, so they're the people that are also watching for the trends and watching what they think will do well, but also what they think could be a good fit for their list and their brand and their reputation, and also just like good book. Like they're often really passionate people that are looking for books that other people should get to read, and there's always editors that have lots of books on their list, but they also have these little passion projects that they're like, this is just a good book. And it might not sell a lot straight away, but I believe in it. They're usually the linchpin of the way a book is phrased, its title, what the cover is, as well as like being somebody who can chapter by chapter be like, I don't think that chapter works, I don't think this chapter works. Editors and authors often become really good friends because they spend so much of their emotional time together, and it's it doesn't always work, but when you find an author and an editor who are friends, it's kind of like this weird thing to experience, because they're just more than they've done something together, and it's. Anyway, I really think being an editor it would be a really cool thing to be, because you're finding talent and people that you think should be heard, but you're also getting a chance to develop this really close kind of artistic relationship with another human. And I imagine when lots of people in the general population agree with you and buy the book and are moved by it, imagine that's a great feeling. So yeah, I think that's another thing. Editors are usually the one that everybody know exist but don't really understand everything they do, and much less appreciate everything they do. So yeah, round of applause for the editors. Keeping the ceiling high, keeping the ceiling up, propping up the ceiling. Once the book is finished and it's a manuscript, there are lots of different places they go, and it's like all hands on decks. Each team is working on that book. So the rights team, if you are in the rights team, you're well good at contracts, you're hopefully boss at legal terms and maths-ish, although often people do this with an English degree or any other kind of degree but learn it on the job. If you're responsible for foreign rights, you know a lot about the trends in other countries, the markets in other territories. If the publisher holds them, you might be looking after the movie rights of a book. You'll be helping the editors I think they help the editors make the contracts. I'm pretty sure they do. But once the contracts are signed, they're the people that go out and then sell the rights to other countries or other territories. They also look after serial rights, which means that if a book gets extracted in, say, a national newspaper or on the radio, they're the people that go in and make a contract with the newspaper or the radio, and they often pay the publisher a fee to read the book aloud, be the first people to read the book aloud, or be the first people to print an extract from the book. And usually a lot of that goes to the author. They also give permission when people want to extract a bit from a book or like quote a book in another book. They're the people that will deal with that, and especially if it's images as well, they're the people that kind of like hustle the value of the content and are responsible for licensing it to be repurposed in lots of different ways, basically. Again, I've never worked with them, but I've worked closely with them, and I've been to Frankfurt Book Fair with them before. There can be lots of travel involved in that, depending on where you work, but there's definitely lots of bartering and knowing about markets and being on the ball in general, basically. While the rights team are doing that, the sales team are on it. They are running about the sales department, basically making the book what it is. So sales teams are selling the book into various markets and various outlets. So an outlet could be W.H. Smith Travel, or it could be Waterstones, or it could be Amazon, or it could be Urban Outfitters. And pre-publication, they are getting sales materials together about that book, and they're going to key accounts managers in those outlets and persuading them to buy in the book. So not going into too much detail, before a book is published, they'll try and get as many people to commit to taking and stocking as many of that book as possible before it's out, so they've got lots in their shops ready to sell. I did this a bit, but in ebook sales and export sales, they're also responsible for moving books around, so they might be the people who monitor how much stock we've got of a book, send it out into the place it needs to be sent out to. They're responsible for shipping books overseas as well. They work with the production team to make sure that books are printed in the right territories and countries and areas and at the right price, and then they're shipped to a warehouse, and then they make sure that they're still in the warehouse and they don't get wet or crushed or lost, and they are the people they're the people to watch if we're low on a book and we need to reprint. They also have to have a huge amount of social skills, because they're usually meeting the kind of accounts people in person and really getting them behind books. So they're usually really bookish, enthusiastic people. My first job actually in publishing was doing ebook sales and export sales. So the ebook side of it, I was like making friends with the people who run iBooks and some of the key accounts managers at Amazon, and trying to do daily deals with them, trying to get books on the front of their platforms and like kind of in their front-facing consumer advertising. I also kind of worked in the production side of that, in that I was like kind of fixing ebooks if they went wrong, checking that they were working properly, sometimes going in and trying to recode them if they were broken, and advising on how you can convert books into ebooks. So say with like a graphic novel, there's lots of different ways you can do that. So I was doing a little bit of that as well, like doing some advisory stuff on the conversion and blah, blah, blah. Am I going too much into detail? And no, it's boring, who can say? So I was doing some of that, but generally my ebooks role was like that. And then export sales, I was tweaking copy. So say for a British audience, the copy on the back of the book might have been written for a British salesperson, a British consumer, and I was tweaking it for territories like the US, so making it a bit more US centric. If it mentioned a celebrity that isn't really big in the US, I'd change it, change American spellings, change American words, and just make it better for an American audience. So I was helping the sales director do that, and also shipping books, which was stressful. So being like, okay, we need to ship 2,000 books of this over the seas by this point. Where are all the forms? Where are all the certificates to make that happen? Did it get there the other end? Have I told everybody, the weight of every book? That kind of thing. So yeah, sales can comprise a huge amount of things. And when I used to run a national newspapers bookshop, so I used to meet with lots of salespeople, and they're incredible. Like the ones that are really good are they just stand out, and you're in love with everything they say, and you get persuaded to take these books that you're like, I don't know why I'm taking a lot of these books, but I am. You get persuaded to feature books that you might not have got for your audience, but they really get your audience even more than you do. And they're just bloody wonderful. And some of the best ones even told me about books that they didn't publish because they were so passionate about the books they were reading. They were like, look, this isn't our book, this is somebody else's, but you should stock it because I've just read it and it's great. So yeah, they're doing that. Wagon wheel break. Production. Production is something that I have been in loads of meetings about and talking about and in decisions when they make decisions about this, but I've never worked in it. But it's like such an interesting, especially if you're into stationery and you're into the production of a book, it's so interesting, although I can imagine very precise and something I might not be suited to. I did film a video of a brilliant production woman called Polly on the Vintage channel that I'll link, so she explains a little bit about what it is. You're working with all the other stakeholders like design and editorial to work out the possible price of a book, and how you want it to look, how thick you want the pages to be, what tail ribbon you want, whether you want foil or not, how many pages is it going to be. You work out how much it would be to print that book and in what quantities, because obviously it's cheaper the more you print, and you make sure that book looks good, you do loads of checks on all the precision around it, and you make a book look sexy, basically. You're really the linchpin between what the ideals of what everybody wants the book to be and what is financially possible. This has become an even more interesting role, like in the last 5 to 10 years, because there's such a big focus on production. Now that you can buy books in ebook and audiobook, you have to give people a reason to buy the physical book. So I think books in Britain, at least, books have been looking a lot better in the last 10 years. And that's because publishers are really investing in making them beautiful objects. Who have I missed? Design! Design! They make the book covers very simply. A lot of publishing houses that are smaller use freelancers for this because they're trying to get the right person for each book. But when you're working in a bigger publishing house, there's often a whole design team. They might just commission a book, but they might do everything from literally painting an illustration on the front cover to designing to doing concept, and for high production value books, designing the inside of books as well. They've got really interesting jobs. I'm always want to sneak around the design department, like, what are they doing? What are they? Where are we? Jesus, lots of things to do. What else is there? Oh yeah, my department. So quite a lot of my roles in the past have come under the umbrella term M&P, or comms, short for communications. This basically means that you're trying to tell the people who might read the books about the books, and you're telling the people who know the people who might read the books about the books. That's as simple as I can get it. There's often a lot of crossover between marketing and publicity. So sometimes in companies those roles are separate and sometimes they're together. But in very basic essence, I was a publicity executive and then a publicity manager for a while. My job was to drum up excitement about a book amongst the people who edit newspapers, the people who run radio stations, the people who produce TV programs, and sometimes bloggers and vloggers. I'd make friends with book reviewers and features editors to try and get pieces about authors in newspapers. I would often accompany authors to events. I'd organise those events. I would get authors on TV. Proudest moment, seeing authors that you love on TV and you've got them there. For non-fiction, making news stories out of books and finding out, pulling out either a personal story from the author or something that is newsworthy and relevant in the book that could be an article or feature. And then also just on the traditional side, getting people to review the book, getting people to talk about the book. So there is events planning. So there's events planning, there's writing pitches, there's preparing authors for interview, taking authors to festivals. There is sending out a hell of a lot of books in the post, and it is super fun. Marketing, on the other hand, usually involves having a budget, although not always. Marketing is more directly talking to the readers or the prospective readers. So finding out where they walk, so maybe like getting a poster on the tube, finding out what they read and listen to and placing an advert in that paper rather than making them cover it in an editorial sense, which would be publicity, placing a literal ad in the paper. 2 more innovative social media campaigns and that kind of thing. Creating POS, which is points of sale, so leaflets, presenters, badges, anything like that. I feel like I'm butchering what people do. I've seen them do everything from producing videos to making soundscapes to organising public stunts. Marketing is a really creative role, and it's also one that you can move into from other industries. I feel like that's a really obvious one to move in between. And then there's what I do. I have a role in a publishing house where I am a social media producer, so I produce, edit, organise. So I produce the podcast, YouTube videos, I run the Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, writing website pieces, coordinating campaigns with marketers or publicists, but also upholding the publishing brand. So making sure that all of our copy is in keeping with the brand, creating content that just encourages people to read, whether that's classics or around a theme, and generally making the publishing house a friendly, reader-centric place to follow. Whew. I don't know how long that took me. Probably quite a while. So what have we got? We've got agents, editors, production, sales, marketing, publicity, rights, and then what I do, which is under the brand team really. It's social media producer. There are lots of other jobs on top of that, but those are the kind of most basic departments within a publishing house that pretty much every publishing house has to run. And if you're in a small publishing house, you might be just one person for each department. Seven, maybe a manager, maybe a director. 8 people could run a publishing house. That could happen. I've seen it done with a lot less. Some people do more than one job. Or you can have 2,000 people in those roles. It's just a spectrum. The wagon wheel is coming to an end, which means I should probably shut up. I hope that was helpful. I hope that if you do want to get into publishing, that gives you some kind of idea of the thing that might interest you. And there's no, you know, you can try it out, you might not like it. What I will say is for most of these roles is that you can have any kind of degree to work in publishing. You can have a specialism, or you can learn it on the job sometimes. You can love books first and learn the skills later. You can have all the skills and then, you know, suddenly have a passion for books and start working in books even if you haven't before. It just depends which way around, but in every department consistently people all read, and they read so much, and they've always got books that they're like crying with passion about, and that is a key theme I've seen from all of the best people in those departments, all of the most successful people. So yeah, and I think that also that might give you a good steer if you are struggling to get a job in publishing. I would advise thinking of a department that you think would suit you and going to work in a different industry but for that same department. You'll be picking up transferable skills, and it also means that later down the line you can apply for a position that isn't entry level, or you'll have something really good to offer, or you have something different and more filled out to offer when you apply. That was it. Please do leave your comments below. If you are a publishing professional and you work in publishing, please help me out in the comments below. I don't know everything. Please help me answer their questions. That was all off the top of my head, so I'm sorry if I missed anything out. I also haven't mentioned other things I've done that are also possible when you're working with books. Working as a bookseller, working in a library, running a bookshop. They're all legit things to do with books too. It doesn't always have to be about making them. It can be about shifting them. That is all for now. Don't forget to watch my other videos on publishing. You can find them here. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Frog Smug out.